Good morning. It's Monday, September 22nd. I'm Phil Streible, Chief Market Strategist at Blue Line Futures. So we have stocks dipping from all-time highs. And you recall on Friday, we had that triple witching. We had the largest amount of option expirations coming off the board. U.S. equity futures pushed into that close here. And we are taking a bit of a breather as of this recording. We got gold futures making a new all-time higher, sitting right at that all-time high at $37.6170. That's up $55 on the December contract. You have silver futures up 2.5%, sitting at 44.07, the contract high, 44.10.5 just a few minutes back. If you recall, over the past few weeks, I told you once we got that decisive close over $40. 42 would be the next major resistance point. We came up to 42 several times in here and had troubles closing over that area. Once we finally got that close, I reminded you back in 2011 when I was trading this with the company MF Global, and I ran one of the largest metals trading desks there. You saw that futures really consolidated between 42 to 44 before they started to break out to the upside on and push on up to that $50 level. So let's check it on your setup on the precious metals, the U.S. equity markets. We do have U.S. equity futures. They are slightly lower after closing at record highs. The S&P 500, well, it may be technically overbought, but it's not going to stop this overall upward trend here with earnings expectations rising, and the market is betting on almost 2 more interest rate cuts this year. So the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ both down about 0.2% here, so 0.2%. The S&P 500 6707 down 15. You got the NASDAQ down 62 at 24,803. You got the Russell 2000 just slightly lower, down 2.6 points here, and that was the one that really suffered the most here on Friday. It really couldn't find its footing until towards the close. Now you look at the gold market hitting a new record high to start this macro data light week here, where we're going to focus on the Fed's preferred inflation gauge released on Friday. We'll also see some PMI data coming out from global central banks. Now you look at cryptocurrencies, those traders, they saw $1.5 billion in bullish wagers liquidated on Monday, and it really triggered this sharp sell-off here that's hitting some of the smaller coins here. You've got Bitcoin futures down about $2,500. That's about a 2% move down higher. Move down, and then you've got Bitcoin here, Ethereum down about 6%. You've also got XRP down about 6%, Solana as well. So you're seeing just a broad-based liquidation on some sharp volume as traders start to rotate into different asset classes. Now you look at things like the gold market, back to that, hitting this fresh record high. It's really the ETF flows hitting a 3-year high with the markets looking for those interest rate cuts, and that's what's fueled prices here continuing to push up about 40% in 2025. You got Citigroup telling their clients here in a note that they're bullish on precious metals as well as to others. They're seeing a shift and a broadening from gold and silver into copper and aluminum and going out into 2026. You got Goldman Sachs, they're changing their S&P 500 target, raising that 3-month projection on up to 6,800. You have UBS as well coming out recommending to buy the dips on the U.S. equity markets as they're saying that this different sectors here, everything from technology, healthcare, utilities, and financials are all starting to push these markets higher. You go into European trading here, those stocks were subdued as traders look for some fresh clues on economic growth. You had shares of Porsche really struggle, and the parent Volkswagen, they dropped after the company cut their outlooks for the year. They're really having a trouble here selling some of those EV vehicles. Traditional Porsche buyers are really looking for those gas vehicles and really want to feel the roar when they hit that gas. Now you go into Asian trading, those stocks edge higher. We saw some regional tech shares rally, and also in Japan, the MSCI, that led the index higher here with 0.2% gains, and it was that Taiwan semiconductor really pushed on up. Now for earnings, we got no major earnings expected for this market open. I will be covering Micron's earnings. If you're unaware, we do also have a sister company, Blue Line Capital. Many of you have your wealth management done over at Blue Line Capital, and that's where we come out and we select active management and a broad-based number of names, and we manage this portfolio for you. Now looking at the economy here, no significant economic releases are scheduled today. You are going to have a lot of Fed speakers though. You'll have Myron Williams and also Hammock and Barkin all coming out and speaking. So what are these futures? What are they expecting as far as interest rate cuts? Because we're going to want to check on this every day, because this is what's helping fuel 2 different elements this rally here in the precious metals. You check out the CME's Fed Watch tool. That next meeting, circle it on your calendar, October 28th, 29th. You got a 91.9% chance of a 25 basis point interest rate cut. You also have an 8.1% chance of no change. The focus is going to be on, you want to see that 25 basis point interest rate cut remain above 80% here from now on all the way throughout. You go into the poly market, it's about an 86% chance of a 25 basis point interest rate cut and a 5% chance of a 50 basis point interest rate cut. They also indicate a 10% chance of no change here, but I expect that these to converge into the 25 basis points. You look at copper futures, those are steady here as traders weigh on the impact of global supplies after an accident in Indonesia that left the world's second largest mine. It's suspended for 2 weeks here. So we're seeing a little bit of upward action here in the copper market. Now, this is where the movement's really taking place in the metals is the ETF flows. So they bought 861,000 troy ounces of gold on Monday. That was on Friday, and that was the most in 3 years. So you look at the year-to-date percentage change, gold up 15%, adding that 861,000, and that was the biggest one-day increase since January 21st, 2022. So the purchases were equivalent to $3.17 billion here, and total gold held is up 15% at 95.8 million ounces. That's the highest level since October 18th of 2022. You go into the silver market, which I know you guys care a lot about, up 13%. They added 1.38 million troy ounces of holdings in the previous trading session. And then what I always look at on Mondays is last week's complete change here. What are the flows? Because we analyze this on a day-to-day basis, and we've seen last week we saw one big inflow, we saw one big outflow, but what was the change here over the week? Well, ETFs, they increased their holdings by 1.22 million troy ounces last week. They increased those holdings in silver by over 8 million troy ounces last week. They reduced a little bit of platinum here. They increased a little bit of palladium. And what happens here with gold or with silver up 2.5%, gold up 1.5%, the gold-silver ratio falls to 85-1, which I put out a note here indicating that I believe that we could see a push down to about 80-1 by year end. So if you guys got any questions, you'd like to check out some of our research, you'd like to open up an account with info, send an email to info@bluelionfutures.com. And remember that futures and option trading does involve risk of loss and may not be suitable to all investors. Good luck, good trading.